A little while ago, I cut the entire Smash roster in half. But what if we did the exact opposite, and instead added 50 brand new characters to the Smash Brothers roster? Okay, so the way we're gonna be doing this is we have this fake character select here, which I photoshopped to the best of my abilities to look kind of legit, and we're gonna be filling in the slots one by one with the characters I've chosen. So first off, Waluigi. A lot of people have been wanting him in Smash. He hasn't had his chance to show up in Smash yet. I don't know, a lot of people are sad about it, so he's like an easy first pick when it comes to Nintendo characters. I imagine his moveset would be based around, I guess, Mario Party and the sports titles. I think that'd be good, so that those games get a little bit of representation. And moving on, we have another Mario character joining. Paper Mario. I think with Paper Mario doing pretty well recently, him joining is kind of a no-brainer. I don't think he'd be like an Echo Fighter. He'd have his own unique moveset, pulling from his own titles all the way back from 64. I'd like to see him represent all the games, even the ones I'm not a big fan of, like Color Splash and Origami King, and Sticker Star as well, I guess. And our final Mario character that's joining is none other than Geno. So Geno's been asked for a lot. He's been a fan favorite for a while. And with him joining, all three series of Mario RPGs are represented with Mario and Luigi, Paper Mario, and Super Mario RPG. He doesn't have that many games to pull from his moveset, well, the only game being Super Mario RPG. But they can make it work, you know? They'll figure it out. So moving on from Mario characters, we now have some Donkey Kong characters with Funky Kong. I imagine Funky Kong could easily be an Echo Fighter to Donkey Kong. Just like mix up his moveset a little bit, like give him his surfboard for his up B maybe. You can either make him actually surf or make him like spin it above his head to fly. I don't know which one would fit best. And with that, I feel like there's only one member of the core Donkey Kong family that's missing. And that is Dixie Kong. I don't know what route I would want them to go with Dixie. Either they make her an echo to Diddy Kong, or they make her an entirely new fighter. Her up B is pretty obvious. She just like spins her hair around. It's kind of like Donkey Kong up B, I guess. She could just be Diddy Kong with Donkey Kong up B. And with two new Donkey Kong reps, I feel like Donkey Kong is pretty well represented. So we're moving on to Zelda, where we're adding Skull Kid. One thing I feel is very important with Smash is that we start representing more villains. We have so many heroes, but not nearly enough villains. So Skull Kid does a good job of like filling a little bit of that space, as well as representing Zelda a little bit more, other than just adding another Link. I feel like the Toon Link games kind of deserve a little bit more representation. So with that, we're adding Tetra and Toon Zelda. I'd like this to be kind of a unique character, not like two characters that you swap between at your own will, but kind of a stance character that swaps stance every move. So like if you use a move with Tetra, you turn into Zelda and vice versa. I know that doesn't really make sense considering how they work in the games. I just think having that kind of character would be really cool. And moving on from Zelda, we have Bandana Waddle Dee representing Kirby. I haven't really played that many Kirby games, but I know that this is a highly requested character from people who enjoy Kirby, and that's why he's my pick. But he's not my only pick from Kirby. I also have Magolor. He had his own like bonus game attached to the Kirby remake, you know? So I imagine he's pretty important in the Kirby games. Finding Nintendo characters was actually surprisingly hard. So even though I don't know much about him, here he is. Next up, we have a franchise I'm pretty surprised I found someone to represent. Crystal from Star Fox. I don't play much Star Fox either. They can make it work. I don't even know she'd have a shine. They could maybe make her like a swordy Spacey, because I think she uses a spear. Maybe like a Spacey with a bit more range. But moving on from Crystal, we have Meowscarada, maybe? It all depends when the next Smash is releasing. Whoever they end up adding is gonna be the current fan favorite fully evolved starter. At this point, it's Meowscarada, but if they release Gen 10 and there's a fan favorite there as well, then that's just gonna take Meowscarada's place. And next up, we have Oshawott. Now you might be thinking, why in the world would he pick Oshawott? Well, the thing is, it's not just Oshawott. That's right, we're adding Hisuian Pokemon Trainer with Oshawott, Kilova, and Hisuian Decidueye on the team. Now, I think it's nice to represent the different Pokemon in the different stages, which is why I mixed it up like this. And we also get a Gen 5 representative, which I think is really nice, because that's my favorite generation, and I'm a little biased, but that's okay. Also, you definitely shouldn't subscribe, because if you subscribe, I'm gonna have to keep making videos, and that takes a lot of time and work, you know, so don't do that. You know we can't have a new Smash game without adding some new Fire Emblem characters. So for that, we have Aleer. I don't play Fire Emblem. It's just gonna be another sword, you know. She probably has some interesting mechanics she can use. I'm sure the Fire Emblem people can figure that out. We've been talking about villains, and I need some more villains in my life. And since we're already adding some Fire Emblem characters, boom. Black Knight. I imagine Black Knight being kind of like Ike. Like he's just gonna be like the super heavy, hard-hitting sword, you know? And maybe even slower than Ike. Now, we're gonna keep the villain streak going here. Louis. Now, Pikmin, I feel like, is on a hot streak right now with Pikmin 4. So I feel like having another rep from Pikmin is pretty clever. Louis doesn't really use Pikmin, so we'd have to make some other moveset for him. We could potentially give him Wario Neutral Bee because he's a hungry hippo. After Pikmin 4, he's kind of a villain, so I feel like that helps his chances. And I guess technically you could call Tom Nook a villain as well. Some people consider him the villain of the Animal Crossing series, and at this point, Animal Crossing is selling so well that I think if the next Smash game has more characters, then Tom Nook is kind of the shoo-in for Animal Crossing that is gonna have another rep for sure. Since we already have representation for Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, we might as well get some representation for Xenoblade 3 with Noah. This is another franchise I don't play. I imagine he's just gonna be a sword fighter, right? There's always ways to make a new sword fighter, you know? So they'll make it work. And we can add another Echo Fighter to the list with Octolink. I imagine their moveset would be pretty similar to the Inklings moveset. I'm sure there are some interesting ways you can make them distinct from one another. For example, you could make the paint effect deal damage over time instead of increasing your dealt damage. Splatoon is such a big game series at this point. Inkling was the first revealed new character for Ultimate, so I feel like they kind of have to add another Splatoon character. Next up, we're moving away from pre-existing franchises that are represented in Smash. But when you're making a new Smash game, it's always important to start representing some new franchises as well. And that's why Isaac finally is a playable character. For his moveset, he would obviously be using some sword moves, some of his magic. There's a lot to take from. I'm sure he'd be one of the more interesting sword fighters we've added so far. After that, we have Chibi Robo, another highly requested character. I know he's pretty small in his own games, so we're gonna have to scale him up a bit, but that's okay because we already do that with Olimar. He's like this tall or something in lore, so scaling up Chibi Robo shouldn't be a problem at all. I kind of imagine him being kind of like a brawler kind of character, kind of like Mario, but also like kind of using his cable and like swing it around for some like moves with a little bit more range. Now we're not done with robots, as I'm also adding Ray Mark III. We're also gonna have to scale up this character because he's also very tiny. But again, that's not a problem. I'm not exactly sure what they would make his moveset because in the games you kind of customize your own moveset. So I think one thing that could be cool is if his down B is like customized and it lets you swap between different sets of specials. So you get like a different up B, neutral B, and side B depending on how many times you press down B. Next up we have a character that was maybe coming to Smash at some point. It's Chorus Kids. Now, at some point, they were leaked. I'm not sure if that was a potential idea or if it was just a fake leak, but a lot of people believe that leak, and therefore I am adding Chorus Kids to represent the Rhythm Heaven series. Smash doesn't really have any good representation for the rhythm game genre, so I feel like Chorus Kids kind of fill that void. I guess maybe you could consider Donkey Kong representation for that because of like the DK bongos and stuff, but I don't think so. And therefore, Chorus Kids is my pick here. We're also gonna go ahead and add Dylan from Dylan's Rolling Western. I've only played one of his games, but he definitely has some real potential for a moveset in Smash. He's already an assist trophy like many of these new characters. So Nintendo's gonna have to put in some work to find some new characters to fill those assist trophy slots. That's fine. And again, it represents a genre that doesn't really have much representation in Smash with tower defense. So unless we're adding the Balloons Monkey at a later point, I think we need Dylan. Next up, we have Starfy. And this might seem a little bit far-fetched considering Starfy was like a Game Boy era character. But at this point, I feel like that kind of fills one of the retro slots. And Starfy's games were recently released out of the US for the first time ever by being released on the Nintendo Switch Online app. So he's kind of more relevant than he's been in a long time. So I don't see why he can't be in the game. Now, next up, we have another game I haven't played. It's the protagonist from Astral Chain. Now, I don't know how popular Astral Chain is, but at this point, I was really desperate for characters to add, which is gonna be pretty apparent in a little bit. Because next up, we have Tetris? I know this might sound very weird, but I think having Tetris be represented would be kind of poetic, you know? Everybody knows Tetris. Making a character out of Tetris blocks might be really hard. If anyone can do it, it's the Smash team. So I don't see why not. And at the same time, it kind of fills the joke character slot that we always need to fill. So yeah. And on top of that, it's a retro character, which brings us to Balloon Fighter. Now, I have no idea how Balloon Fighter would work, because essentially Balloon Fighter is just villager up B. The 64 character movesets were kind of based off of nothing a lot of the time. So maybe if they reimagine Mario, they can give him Mario's moveset and just have him be like the spiritual successor to Mario's Smash moveset, you know? That could work. And up next, we have a character that comes kind of out of left field, I think. It's Sandbag. Now, Smash is one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. But if you really think about it, Smash is not represented in Smash, which is why we're going to go ahead and add Sandbag. His moveset could easily be based around items and kind of like hitting himself. I know there's already a mod for him, so there's definitely potential here to build a moveset. And with that, we're done with the Nintendo portion. I decided to make 30 out of 20 characters Nintendo. Even though the portion of characters that is third party increases every Smash title, it didn't feel right to have the majority of characters be third party when I'm making a Smash game, which is why I decided to do it this way. So our first third party representative is Shadow the Hedgehog. I know Tails and Knuckles will be more interesting moveset-wise. I think if they don't make Shadow an Echo Fighter, he could also be very interesting as a moveset, which is why I'm picking Shadow. Shadow represents a series already in Smash, and our next character also does that. It's Akuma. Now, we have Ken and Ryu already, and I think maybe if you add a third Street Fighter character, you might not want another Shoto. You might want someone like Chun-Li. But at the same time, I like my villains, so I'm gonna go ahead and add Akuma. If they wanna give Ken the boot and replace him with Chun-Li, they're free to do that, you know? I wouldn't complain, but I feel like we need a villain from Street Fighter, and Akuma he's just that, you know? And with that, we're actually done with the already existing franchises in Smash. From this point on, it's only new franchises. And we're starting off with Monster Hunter. Honestly, I was shocked that Monster Hunter wasn't a DLC character in Smash Ultimate. Especially considering Rathalos is already in the game as a boss. Every single time they were revealing a new DLC character, I was like, oh, it's gonna be Monster Hunter, you know? But it never happened. And you might have noticed that that's 2 Capcom characters in a row. But we're not stopping anytime soon, because the next character is Dante. Now, Dante from the Devil May Cry series, he's a very, very highly requested character. And he's already in Mii costume, which makes me feel like he was at least in consideration for a character to be added to the game. So there you have it, Dante. And next up, we have Leon Kennedy. We need some horror representation in Smash. And Leon Kennedy fits that slot nicely, while also being a character that represents a big franchise. Now, you might be thinking 4 Capcom characters is a little bit much. But when I was looking for new characters, Capcom characters just kept popping up, you know? So we're actually going to have 5 Capcom characters with Phoenix Wright. Now, you might say, how in the world are they going to make Phoenix Wright a fighter? They already did it in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So I definitely think there's room for him to be a fighter in Smash. Heck, they even made Villager into a fighter. So I don't see why they can't make Phoenix Wright into a fighter. And the same logic also applies to Professor Layton. I feel like these two kind of go hand in hand, you know? They've even had a call-up game at some point. So to have these two represent the, like, puzzle-solving genre, I guess, would be kind of sick. Up next, we have a pretty classic character, actually, with Bomberman. Bomberman is already an assist trophy. When they first showed Bomberman off, I was like, damn, they added Bomberman? But no, he's just an assist trophy. So we have yet another character escaping the assist trophy and taking the rightful place as a fighter. And on top of that, Bomberman was also a Mii costume, which also is true for Lloyd Irving. Now, Lloyd, I haven't played his game series, so I'm not sure how his moveset would work. I'm sure they could make it pretty cool with, like, his flame and ice sword, the twin blades, I think they're called. So visually, I'm sure he would be a pretty stunning sword fighter. But moving a little bit away from sword fighters, we're going to have a platformer character with Klonoa. Bandai Namco, who also own Lloyd, actually, They help Nintendo with Smash. And they also own Pac-Man, who's already in the game. And you can even see Pac-Man on Klonoa's hat there. So I think Klonoa being added to like represents kind of the like mascot platformer thingy is kind of nice. But there's so many mascot platformer characters out there. So our next character is gonna have to be Rayman. He was rumored for Smash ever since Smash 4. Some people even say they see him in the ice on Battlefield. It's crazy that he hasn't broken out yet, but maybe he will at this point. And we're still not done with the platforming genre, because our next character is Crash Bandicoot. Now, Crash was kind of dormant for a good while, but with Crash 4 being as good as it was, I could easily see him getting into the next Smash game as a third-party character. And now we'll have a shocker of a character. One that would make a lot of people happy. Master Chief. Now, I'm sure Master Chief wouldn't be that fun to play against, considering it would probably be projectile hell. But we already have that with like Snake and Samus, so it can't be that bad, you know? I imagine he'd play kind of like Snake, but maybe a little bit more fast-paced and a little bit more focus on close quarters combat. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he would be a cool addition. Now, a similar character to Master Chief would be Doom Guy. I imagine his moveset would be kind of the same. We're actually adding a lot of characters with guns as these third-party characters. But I think that's fine, right? Like, Joker uses a gun. Even though it's like a fake gun, I think we can, like, take that step to use some real guns, you know? Now, for something a little less serious than Doom Guy, we're gonna have Kazuma Kiryu join the fight. I just think this would be really funny. And I also think people would absolutely love it if he was a character in Smash. I imagine his moveset would kind of be like the Drunken Warrior kind of character, where he like just accidentally keeps hurting you and stuff. And next up, we have kind of a retro character, I guess, with Chrono from Chrono Trigger. He'd probably be another sword fighter. He kind of would fit right there alongside Hero, as they both are drawn by Akira Toriyama. So visually, he'd be a perfect fit for the games. Again, he would be a sword fighter, but I imagine he would be kind of like a fast and nimble sword fighter. And next up, you know, we haven't added that many FGC characters, have we? Saul Bad Guy. Now, Guilty Gear has really risen to the top recently, going from kind of like this niche fighting game to being a FGC mainstay with Guilty Gear Strive. And therefore, I think Saul Bad Guy actually deserves a spot in Smash, even though it might sound like crazy. I could definitely see it happening. And next up, I want some indie love in this game, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and add the Knight from Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is on the Switch, so I definitely think Team Cherry would give Nintendo the go-ahead to add this character. I think it would fit right in both visually and gameplay wise. So I don't see any reason this character cannot make it. And as you know, he is the Hollow Knight. And you know what other game has to do with like Hollow stuff? Dark Souls, which is why we're adding the Chosen Undead. And I know what you're saying. Oh, come on, Whoophee, you should add Solaire. And I get where you're coming from. Solaire is a pretty iconic character, but I feel like not adding the player character would not be doing justice to Dark Souls. But definitely, because you can like customize your armor and stuff, they could just make Solaire like a custom costume. I definitely think this character would be maybe like a slow, hard-hitting sword fighter with some magic thrown in there. He definitely needs to have the best role in the game, otherwise they're doing something wrong. And that brings us to our final character, which is none other than Jonesy. Now, you've probably been sitting here the entire time wondering, is he gonna add some Fortnite character? Yes, I am. Fortnite is just too big to ignore at this point, kind of like Minecraft, which is why I'm gonna go ahead and add Jonesy. I think if they gave him like a building mechanic and also maybe even a headshot mechanic, where if you hit the opponent's head, he deals bonus damage and bonus knockback, I think honestly he could be pretty cool and a high skill steering character. And there you have it. My entire fake Smash roster. If there's any character you feel like should be on this list that I didn't mention, make sure to comment below. Just remember that this is my opinion and it's just a list I threw together pretty quickly. If I thought about it more, maybe I'd swap some characters out. But overall, I feel like this is a pretty solid list.